All right, let's get started. My name is Alok Pant. I'm CEO of Unvired, based in Houston, Texas. And joining me today is our CTO, Srini Subramanian, who is going to share his experience of building these apps. So first of all, a very warm welcome to everyone today on the call here. Good morning, afternoon, and evening, wherever you are. We are super excited to host this webinar and share our learnings around this emerging and exciting field of generative AI. We'll just call it GenAI from now. So before we dive into the content, just some housekeeping notes. You can submit your questions throughout using the Q&A tab, I guess. We will have an interactive Q&A at the end, and we will stay as long as you have questions. We are in no hurry. And let me announce right up front that we have a special POC offer for all attendees. We are offering a free strategy consulting workshop for GenAI and also POCs for Eureka, which is Unvired's first GenAI app for knowledge management, and also discounted pricing for whatever POC you want to do, whether it's knowledge assistance or any custom use case you have in mind. This webinar is part of a series we are going to be doing. So the next one is on Tuesday, October 17th, again at 11 Central. And on that webinar, we want to discuss agents for or assistance for SAP, ServiceNow, asset maintenance and claims, or maybe you have some other custom agent you have in mind. And we're also super excited to announce that we've launched a LinkedIn group on GenAI. The whole idea is for us to, all of us, right? Because we all have a shared interest, I think, in understanding GenAI and deploying GenAI. And so we want to create this hub where we can share information, our experience, and also learn from each one of you on the call. So we hope that all of you join the LinkedIn group. All right, let's quickly move on. We'll dive into the content real quick. But before we do that, here is a look at the agenda today. Very quick overview on Unvired. We'll discuss the building blocks of GenAI. This is not a theoretical class. We're going to talk about what we have built and our learnings, but just more of level setting. Some of the key challenges as we start this journey. We're going to talk about Eureka, the knowledge assistant GenAI app that we have built. We can discuss custom GenAI apps and how do we get started, followed by a live demo of Eureka. So we are a SAP certified partner and a Google Cloud partner company based in Houston, Texas, customers all over the globe. And we've been doing this for a long time. Digital transformation is our thing. In addition to GenAI apps, we build predictive AI apps and assets, mobile apps for asset management, low-code solutions, and all that. But today we are going to talk about GenAI. So this is the services, or these are the services we are offering. So we are, we have a consulting workshop to starting right from your GenAI strategy to responsible AI, and then, what is the use cases we should be considering, and let's build the POC and eventually go to production. So that's the consulting workshop, is how to strategize around GenAI. Then, of course, the app dev piece of it. We'll show you a demo of our first foray in this. And then we build some accelerators and frameworks to deploy these apps securely and quickly. And then, of course, the productization or the AI ops piece of this. So those are the 4 pillars of our services. And then we've got, recognition over the years. SAP has been a long partner of ours, long-standing partner. And then we got our, every few years, I guess, we get recognized by Gartner. So we like to share that with our audience. And I want to spend 30 seconds on this, and then we dive into the GenAI content. So we formed a GenAI Center of Excellence that is headed by Srini, and we have a team focused on really understanding this and playing with this, with all the tools in this area. We built accelerators and a framework to deploy these apps quickly. We've always had a strong enterprise focus. So we understand security and risk and all that, business processes. We have a lot of happy reference customers. Many of them are actually on this call, and it's a delight to see so many of our customers attend this call today. We take great pride in being responsive and in being a cost leader, because that means we can deliver cost-effective solutions to you. So with that, let's start diving into GenAI. So just to define GenAI, right? It's really simple, right? It's the branch of AI that creates new multimodal content, text, audio, code, all that, right? Images. And so at Unvired, we are using GenAI in 2 main areas right now. So our marketing team is using it to create blogs and other content. This presentation was not created by GenAI. However, the image that you see has been created by GenAI, and we've used Adobe Firefly. And I was just trying to guess the prompt. And it seems to me that the prompt was something like, give me a butterfly perched on a globe and floating in space. I think that's what it looks like, but I'll have to check with our marketing team. So anyway, you get the idea of generative AI. It creates content, any kind of content. Yeah, so at this point in time, I'm going to hand it over to Srini, who's been actually playing with all these building blocks, if you will. So Srini, if you can take us through the maze of large language models and vector databases and prompt engineering and fine tuning and all these. Hugging face is not, you don't hug a hugging face. So explain to us what all this means.
Thanks, Alok. Actually, I'm going to start with a very short demo. Let me start with a very simple question. What I'm trying to do is to really see how GenAI is different from many of the other traditional or non-traditional ML AI that all of us have been working with. I've taken the liberty of copying some text from our website. So I'm going to say use this context and answer the question. So you'll see that the LLM actually picks up what I just put as part of content in the previous question and starts answering based on the content that I just presented to it. This is actually a fundamental difference if you look at it between how GenAI works compared to your typical ML AI that we're all used to, right? So I hope you're seeing my slides again. So what you just saw was one of the things that we talk about when we look at large language models, right? You would have heard of things like prompt engineering and vector databases, RAG, retrieval augmented generation and whatnot. What we'll try and do today is to decipher most of those building blocks and try to delve into a little more detail when we look at the demo. I'll try and compare contrast with the different building blocks that we've been discussing. So first up, you see OpenAI, GPT-4, ChatGPT. We've basically put that in for two reasons. One is, of course, it's probably the most famous LLM floating around. And second thing is I'm going to use that for the demo today. But we also work with other models like the Google Vertex AI or OpenAI, which is available on Azure, which is if you're looking at some kind of private deployment because you're worried about your data confidentiality, etc. Coincidentally, OpenAI just announced a new service today, which they call Enterprise ChatGPT, with a promise that it's SOC 2 compliant and your data doesn't get used for other purposes. But having said that, you have AWS, Amazon Bedrock. They have a bunch of services around that. And Hugging Face, like Alok mentioned, is more, let's say, a model hub and a bunch of transformers that allow you to actually utilize, let's say, other models, right? Like maybe a Llama 2 or even open models, others like GPT for all, etc. You can actually do your training, your fine tuning, and also your inferences from Hugging Face. So it gives you some kind of a private hosting specifically for you, right? So it kind of compartmentalizes. If you compare that to, let's say, an OpenAI, which provides you the GPT-4 or ChatGPT service, right? Now, those are some of the popular LLMs we looked at. But if you look at the other points that we talk about in terms of key components, you have vector databases. Now, what are vector databases? If some of us probably still remember from our physics courses in terms of scalars and vectors. So vectors are basically a multi-directional representation or mathematical representation of your data, right? It could be images, it could be text files, it could be text from PDF, Word documents, or websites, even audio, video. You can actually make a mathematical representation and then store that in vector databases. So okay, fine, we've stored that. So what do you do with it, right? And that's where the big difference comes in. If you look at traditional search, right, we're all familiar with the keyword search that we always do, right? So you're looking for something, you put in a few keywords, you get your answers, be it Google or enterprise search or anything. Vector databases give you what's more called semantic search. So it actually provides much better search results compared to keyword search when it comes to looking at documents or other topics that you can actually get pretty close to what you're searching for. Prompt engineering, I'm going to skip for now. I'm going to talk about it later, but suffice to say, similar to what Alok mentioned, you're basically using it to tell the AI assistant, agent, bot, whatever you want to call it, as to what you want the assistant to do for you, right? And that's something that you actually put into the prompt so that the assistant understands the tasks that are going to get assigned to it. Fine-tuning is also something we'll cover a little later. So let's look at briefly the architecture. Starts with the user prompt, which is something that we as app developers or GenAI developers actually would put into the system. And the prompt actually works with an input message that you as a user are going to type in. So once you have the prompt, you're basically going to search for the relevant information, be it PDFs, Word, maybe some websites, etc. Now, you see this box coming in here where we talk about search relevant information, we show a vector database. A very key concept to understand here is that LLMs work with something called as a context window, and that is limited in terms of the number of tokens it can handle. For simplicity's sake, let's just assume a token is a word, right? So you would have seen blogs and reports about 4K tokens that OpenAI offers, 16K and 32K and all that. It basically says that when you ask the agent to do something for you or the LLM, you can provide it information which is limited to the token size that they accept. So if you say 4K, you're basically looking at something like 4,000 words, let's say, roughly. Now, this already gives you a hint as to what the limitation could be. Assume you have a 100-page PDF of a manual that you actually want to search, and you're already limited by the token window, right? So that's where vector databases come in, where you basically reduce the document to a bunch of paragraphs, and then you first do your search in the vector database to get the relevant paragraphs out, expand that content if required, and then post that to the LLM saying, hey, here's the context for this particular question. Try and answer that for me. And that way you actually get a larger utilization of the window that you have from tokenization, right? There's also what's called as RAG, or retrieval augmented generation. Now, once you post the data to the LLM actually works with it and returns a generated response, which you can then use either as a one-time query that you had and you got some information, or you could use it more like a chat where the entire history kicks in. So context of previous questions that you've asked are retained, and you can continue to chat with the agent, right?
Shri, let me just ask you a question here. So just to kind of make it more clear to the audience, so we have to do this because the general purpose LLM has not been trained on your company's data, right? So it doesn't have knowledge of that. So basically what we're doing is we are extracting some relevant paragraphs from the vector database, which has the company knowledge, and then feeding that context to the LLM. So the LLM now understands what it has the knowledge now to give the answer. Is that correct? That's the whole idea.
If you go back to the ChatGPT demo I did, I think there was a date of September 21 until which it is trained. So any information on the internet that's outside of that date is not available, and your private information has obviously not been used for that training. So you're right. One of the reasons we do this is to make sure that you provide your private context to the LLM so that you can get generated answers based on the context you have supplied.
Another way to say it, would that be that we are just enhancing the prompt with this new context? Is that prompt orchestration,
Correct.
Prompt enhancement?
Okay. Correct.
All right.
It also includes the history, right? I mentioned about the chat. So it also includes history, which means previous questions, previous answers, and it also includes whatever information you want the LLM to, kind of digest and then give you the required info.
Another important point I think we should highlight is this also avoids the need for fine tuning, right? Because fine tuning, from what my understanding, is a little bit more tedious, more maybe costly. So this, we don't need to fine tune. We can use this kind of a solution also, right?
That is right. And we will come to that because, all the tools that we have spoken about so far, which is prompt engineering and, the generated context that we provide, actually works hand in hand with fine tuning also. It is just that with fine tuning, you end up getting better results. And we will cover that, I think, in one of the later slides.
Okay.
Let me quickly look at some of the challenges. I'm pretty sure, many of you have come across some of these. The most important is if you look at data, right? Any enterprise, how much ever you desire, you're always going to have unstructured data in PDFs or documents or some kind of intranet sites. It's not possible to have everything inside a SQL compliant database, right? And that's one of the biggest benefits you have as from an LLM, that you don't really need to have it in a database. You can actually have loaders custom built if required to kind of process your unstructured data from a variety of sources. Could be emails, could be chat messages from your teams, could be anything. As long as you can extract the data, you can feed that in and then get intelligence and answers out of that. So that's one of the biggest things that one needs to work with when you look at a GenAI project, which is to work with all formats of data, right? And then put a governance model around that so that you're aware of the the security issues here in terms of the kind of data you're going to expose, and allow people to actually question and get answers out of that, so on and so forth, right? So if you look at the risks, I think I was just briefly touching upon this in the data part, is the model bias, the hallucinations, and the data security. So when you look at hallucinations, it's really that many times LLMs go off track, right? They jump into other things, give you answers, which they start thinking about on their own, which they really don't want. Let's look at the rest of the boxes, maybe during the Q&A. So what we're going to do subsequently is, look at one of these accelerators, of which I will do the demo, which is more a search on a website. And my colleague Rao will actually take you through some of the pieces we have on the analytics side, where you actually perform natural language querying on a structured database. Agents is something that Alok mentioned upfront that we plan to have another webinar in a month's time. Agents are a little different from your typical knowledge base or other assistants, simply because agents have additional intelligence that is used to work with systems that you actually are utilizing within your enterprise, be it SAP or anything else, right? And this is something where the LLM helps you to delegate these tasks via the agent to these systems. And this could be utilized from maybe a Teams or some kind of a web chat. And what I'm going to show you today is a web chat, but you might as well have been, doing that via Teams. Let me go to the demo. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and then I'm going to, jump to the other window. Basically, what we will look at is, we have our web content, which is, forms builder. We have a no-code tool called as Turbo Apps, which is actually a no-code tool to build, forms and workflows behind that. And we're going to be actually querying that system. What you're seeing here is basically a chat window. The agent is basically trained on answering queries from our website. So basically the website has been scraped, and you have the content which has been ingested into a vector database. So assuming that you want to utilize this tool to actually build forms and workflows and whatnot, and you're trying to figure out your way, not wanting to read documentation. So let's start with something very simple. Let me put in something. So what you're seeing here is I've just sent over a question to say, what are the kind of controls that are supported by, Turboforms? And you see that you're getting a bunch of answers in terms of the controls that are supported. You also get a few references below, which is very useful. What it basically indicates is that the references have been used to generate this answer, right? So let me.
And this is searching our website, is that right?
That is right. The web content has been ingested, and then the references are actually, if I open them, it's actually going to switch to the website. So let's say I want to have some images in my form, and that's something I'm trying to figure out how to do. So you get the answer. So if you go in a little more detail on how to do it, then you would then get further answers in terms of what you can do with that particular image content that you're asking for. So let me quickly check maybe addresses. How do I validate them, for example? I hope it also goes wrong a little bit so I can actually talk about that. So what you see here is a quick example where I said, can I collect addresses? And then I just said, how do I validate them, right? I'm not talking about validating addresses, but the context is picked up. And this is what Alok was alluding to before. And the LLM actually understands that I'm now referencing the previous question of addresses, and therefore gives me an answer in terms of how do I validate them. Now, there are some technical things, given that this is a development website for no code, right? So I'm going to ask some of the questions, which is more to do with, let's say, a typical no code developer would be wanting to do, right? Let's say I want to read data from Salesforce online and update my form. So I'm pretty sure that you wouldn't really know as a user when you're working with such tools as to how you're going to work with something, which is a particular technology within that. So it allows you to actually explore the tool a lot better and then try and get some brief answers. And then you can obviously go to the references to try and figure out, how you can work with it. So let's say, how do I connect to Salesforce? And you see, that gives me a very brief answer, right? And maybe that's not what I want. Some details on how I would configure this. So what we're now trying to do is to actually tell the agent that, the previous answers that was given is kind of not sufficient and actually need more details. Now, this is probably how you would have a conversation with another individual, right? Where you get an answer which is not satisfactory. So you tell them, hey, that's not what I'm looking for. I need something more. And now you start getting further details in terms of, how you can actually set this up and have a Salesforce connection in your workflow, which you can then utilize, and so on and so forth. So you can keep going on. And as you can see, it keeps taking the context that you work with last, and you can have as big a window or as small a context window as you want, and get answers in terms of the exact task that you want to perform. Now let's look at, I can go on and on, but I think let's look a little bit about what we're doing here, right? So Alok mentioned, is this from a website? Yes, it's from a website. It's our documentation portal. And what we have done is we basically utilize that as the document source, right? So we've loaded that data into a vector database so that we can actually perform what's called a RAG, right? A retrieval augmented generation. So you have the prompt, which basically is a very basic prompt that we've used here for this demo. And all it does is takes the context and then tries to get the LLM to answer that for you. The context is something we fill dynamically using vector databases and semantic search so that you get the closest articles that one wants to use, and then you can work with it. And this is probably something I should have started off with, but never mind. This is just to show you that the prompt actually gives the assistant or the agent its character, right? So you can tell the assistant that, you know what, I want to have an English, which is, I don't know, American or British or whatever, and the agent would appropriately answer. And that's how you actually give a character to the assistant. And then you can go on and on with the different answers and the references that you keep getting and build upon that. And this is something that's available to you at any point of time with whatever sources you're working with, so that you can refer to that quickly and then work between your chat and your actual work. You could also potentially combine chat with search, excuse me, so that you have both your traditional search, which is now AI powered, so you actually get better search results and not just the keywords. And you could also switch it into a Q&A mode. So you can actually work quite easily with both options. This is what I wanted to show.
So before we move to the NoSQL, kind of the querying of databases. So from a use case perspective, so this could be used to search your legal documents, your maintenance documents, installation manuals. We can also summarize documents. So we had a doctor come to us and they said, listen, we have these Medicare policies, a 100-page policy. I don't want to read a 100-page document. I'm a doctor. So you could summarize the document and, so there's a lot of use cases for the knowledge assistant, summarization, text extraction, and of course, Q&A chat. So with that, let's move to the second feature of this, which is these analytics or the, I guess, querying databases. So Rao, if you want to give us a quick 2-minute demo.
Yes. Yeah, so I'm going to expand on what Srini just described, right? Now, okay, so let me share my screen and take you through a SQL assistant that we have built. Okay. So yeah, in the previous example, the engine was trained on a website, right? And then it was able to fetch results. In this example, we have taken a database, and this is what we call as Northwind database, right? This is used by Microsoft for all the demos, and it's a very simple database of customers, orders, suppliers, and shippers, right? So you have customers ordering products which are supplied by certain shippers, right? So that is what this database is about. Now let's see how I can query this database using natural language, right? So let me ask something very simple, saying, okay, so list all the customers we have, right? And then let's see what comes up here. And then, yes, these are the customers I have. Now I might need some more details, right? So I'm listing me the names of customers. So I can expand on this by saying, show me the complete details of the customers, right? And then, yeah, so that should be right here. Okay. Yeah, again, so this is not picking up. So I can improve this further, saying that, let's say I want some specific information, right? So I can say list the details of, let's say I pick up one customer in this list. And let's see if that picks up here. Yes, I have some details of this customer, right? And yeah, this is coming directly from the database. Now I can go a little further and ask some really complex queries, right? So I have a database of orders and I have customers ordering products. Let's say I want to find out all my orders for a specific product. So let me do show me all orders for tofu, right, in the last 6 months. And let's see what comes up here. Yeah, so yeah, I can see the order details here, right? And then it not just picked up tofu. There's also another product which has word tofu, right? And it has also picked up as it should. So it has picked up all the details here, right? And let me, if I want to find out what percentage of my orders are getting delivered, right? I can also do that. Of orders or were successfully delivered. I can also run some simple aggregation queries on the database to find out what is my max, what's my average, what is the total number, right? And things like that.
Okay. So thank you for the demos. Appreciate it. So today, again, as I said, we are offering two POCs. So one is the one you can leverage Eureka, the app we have already built for knowledge management, for text search, Q&A, summarization, and all that, right? We will use your data. It will be done in an AI, responsible AI, making sure that your data is not going anywhere or training any other model. So we'll have to figure that out. And we'll probably utilize prompt engineering or something called RAG, but those are how we'll kind of implement the solution. And we'll evaluate various LLMs, OpenAI, Google Vertex AI, it could be Anthropic, Claude. I mean, we don't know. Actually, there is no one model that is the answer for everything. So there has to be some experimentation. The team will be, a domain expert, likely from your company, who has, if it's a legal document, maybe somebody from your legal department, and the rest of the team comes from us. There'll be a prompt engineer, an application engineer, an architect, security advisor. Srini will, of course, be leading the team overall. And we think this is about a 4 weeks POC. And you may say, I'm not interested in a search use case. I want to build my own custom GenAI app. So we can, we leverage the accelerators and the framework that we have to actually build whatever use case. It could be a claims management. It could be something around asset management. Service now, doesn't matter. And again, the same principles would apply. And the only thing that here would be added would be integration with an SAP or a ServiceNow. And actually, very interestingly, about 4 years ago, we've already built chatbots that actually integrate with SAP and ServiceNow, but that was using what is now the old NLP. So we like to think of this as steroids now. So now we can do this much more powerfully. And we're offering discounted pricing for your first POC around this area, right? We want to co-innovate with you, and we want to make it affordable so people are not worried about too much costs, because I've seen quotes and other software vendors and the larger players, they're offering, pricing of $50,000 and up. All I can say is will be substantially lesser than that. So if you don't want to pay that much money, we can have a really interesting conversation. So with that, let's open it up for questions and answers. Has anybody already built GenAI apps? Because as I said, we want to co-innovate and learn. So please feel free to share your experience about any learnings you have had.
I'm Victor from Lando Basel, and I had the questions. So my questions is whether your Eureka can be able to read the text from the image formatters file, like JPEG or GIF file, and then use the information from that image formatter file and answer the questions from end users.
Victor, if I understand you correctly, what you're mentioning is you have images which have actually text content in the images. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Like people
Sure.
actually taking the photo or scan, the old copy of documents.
Yeah.
And I mean, as human being, you read it, you understand, you extract the information, you scrap the data from that images. So I'm not sure if your Eureka actually had the same capability, I would say.
It's possible, yes, Victor, you can do that because, like I said, there are multiple data sources you deal with. One of them, interesting one, is what you're mentioning, where maybe you have handwritten documents or forms that you want to actually utilize for this purpose, right? That's quite possible that you utilize again LLM models to basically read and convert your images into text, which can then be crunched and then questions answered. That's very possible.
Yes, thank you. So have you built any like generative AI modules for customers, and has that so-called capability? I mean, theoretically, it's possible, but have you ever actually done that?
So let me answer that question. So we are right now working with a healthcare practitioner where we are doing the search, but this has not come up. But here's what I would suggest. Our team can experiment and we will let you know what success we have. So far, we haven't done this, but why don't we take this as a challenge and get back to you? Is that okay?
Yes, sir. It sounds good. Thank you.
There's just one answer I want to add, Alok. If you recall, maybe it's your mind, but we did have these use cases even before LLM, right? You had pictures of poles and equipments taken.
A New Zealand customer, I know.
Exactly, their numbers, and we used to convert that and figure out, get equipment details and whatnot. So yeah, in different ways this has been done. But interesting is to now, like Alok said, on steroids, you can do that with LLMs. Yeah.
So Srini, net we have to read the text in an image. It could be a photo with some content.
Correct.
Yeah. So we'll work on that. Let's get back to Victor. And in fact, we'll get back to everybody. All right. Okay, there's a question from Karun. So Karun, go ahead.
Hi, hello. Hey. This is actually the whole concept engineers team sitting here. Very interesting. I mean, this, to be honest, this actually opened our eyes to the GenAI, and it's kind of is giving a lot of ideas and all that. We still don't know exactly, where to go with the information that you just provided. Because I mean, as you know, Alok, ours is a pretty comparatively low tech. We are engineers, basically. We design things. And there are a lot of ideas that with this young group that I have here, that are coming up, more questions than ideas, I should say. I would love to have an opportunity to actually this team to discuss with you and see how we can actually maybe start off the process of enterprise search or even a custom GI app. But even to get there, I would need a lot of help. So how do we go? My question is, how do we go about the process?
Yeah, so Srini, please add, but so one of the things we are offering is a free consulting workshop. So you would have somebody like Srini, our architect, start working with you. So Srini, can you please add to how do you see working with Karun's team to get things thought through?
Sure. And Srini, just to give you an idea, we are civil structural engineers. Basically, we design buildings, we design roads, things like that.
Sure, like Alok mentioned, I think, Karun, it all starts with a conversation between us as individuals and before we bring the bots into action. So we can probably chat to figure out what are those, pressing problems that you look at, which could be solved or approached using LLMs, right? Because end of the day, when you start the journey, you really don't, realize that there are so many things that can actually be offloaded to these LLMs. They're quite powerful, right? But the challenge is to make sure that you identify use cases where the bias is less from a model, because you don't want incorrect answers, right, when you start off. So you start small, but once you see success, you can obviously roll it out to a lot more things. My suggestion is that Alok can help us set up a conversation and we can take it from there. But I'm quite sure we'll figure out how to work with your team. As long as the will is there to do things right, we can definitely work together to do that.
And Karun, we are both in Houston, so this is an opportunity to get lunch also, right? So I'll come over and we'll have get Srini.
Absolutely,
also.
yeah. Come on over, and the whole team is excited. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you for the question. We have about a couple of minutes. As I said, we are here to answer as long as you guys want. So
Alok, there is one more question. How do you address the concerns about data security?
Okay. So Srini, you can talk about the deployment. This is a good time to talk deployment options, right? Private hosting.
Correct.
So go ahead, please.
Correct. See, data security is one of the biggest challenges when it comes to the LLM models, right? Because the computing power you need to deploy and run these LLMs is pretty massive. Not that easy to do on-prem compared to maybe taking ERPs or even other solutions into your data center, right? So multiple options available. The least attractive would probably be to use ChatGPT or GPT-4, given the nature of that beast. But you do have other options. Could be, using OpenAI on an Azure cloud, because that is something that is now hosted for you within your private network. You could also consider things like, Hugging Face or Replicate and so on. There are a bunch of services there where what they offer you is private instances of private hosting, just from an inference standpoint. What do I mean by inference? To basically answer your questions. And there's also a good time to spend a minute maybe on the fine tuning that Alok mentioned, right? Because at the end of the day, what LLMs can achieve for you out of the box with just the prompt engineering in terms of asking, right? Simple English in terms of making the assistant understand what you're asking for, provided the relevant material based on which it needs to answer. Now, this is something that is typically limited by the number of tokens or the performance, where you don't want to keep sending up kilobytes and megabytes of data every call. Because remember, these LLMs don't have a context at all. They are stateless. They work with what you're providing them at that instant. That is where you can probably look at some of the other options like private deployment in AWS or Google, or even Hugging Face related transformer solutions, where you can use either open source LLMs like Llama 2. So for a fact that this data is not actually going to go to the commercial enterprise behind this, or you could use paid services from Google or any other enterprise provider. So you have options all across. Could be cloud, could be private, could be just hosted for you. If you have a bunch of GPUs, you can even run the inference in-house, right? Because you don't really need GPUs for the inference. Your CPU should take care, but it would be really slow. Having some GPUs would just make that better. So you can choose anything based on how secure you need it to be. Or if you have regulations like HIPAA, et cetera, maybe it's best to then have some hardware in-house and then do it so you don't have any concerns there.
All right.
So let me just summarize on fine-tuning also, Alok.
Go ahead.
So prompt engineering, like I said, gives you most of the results. But sometimes you have very domain-specific. If I go to the discussion we just had on civil engineering and a bunch of data there, could be very, very domain-specific, which the LLM itself is not aware of. And providing that information with every call could be difficult. That is where you would adopt to something called as fine-tuning, where you use the LLM model as provided by the provider, be it OpenAI or Google or anybody else, but you provided additional learning, right? Which is what is called assisted learning or extra learning, by providing this domain expertise so that you don't need to provide that every time to the agent thereafter or the LLM, right? It already has that, has learned whatever you supplied, and then would start answering based on that. Those are the use cases where maybe fine-tuning makes sense, but be aware that fine-tuning actually comes at a cost. The API costs them more compared to standard costs, right? And there's a tuning cost involved, et cetera, but it does provide benefits which non-fine-tuned system wouldn't. I'll probably leave it there.
But fine-tuning seems scary. Do I need deep learning experts? Is it a lot of money? Is it very tedious? But I think it's not that hard, right? So can you?
It's not at all hard. It's not at all hard, Alok. It's basically like any other integration you would do. You provide data to an endpoint, and then you call the system, and it gives you back a fine-tuned model after some time, and then you could then utilize that in all your calls after that. So it's actually very easy to do. All these providers have really made that extremely consumable, if I can use the term.
Sounds good. I think we'll end the call right now. I want to thank everybody who's staying right till the end. Hopefully the content was good. We'll send you the link to the recording, the deck, and also the invite to the LinkedIn group. Please join us in this co-innovation journey. We really mean it when we say we want to co-innovate. Again, thanks a lot, everyone. Goodbye. Have a good day. Bye.